say that, people, we all live in a very, very busy time. You've got classes, you've got studying, you're writing, you're producing papers. For me, my suggestion would be find some time every day, and it could be a half an hour every day. You're going to go to Starbucks, you're going to sit down with a cup of coffee, forget about that. Find a place where you can, get quiet in your own head with your computer or your pen or whatever, and dedicate that. Give that half an hour to yourself every single day. Some people meditate, some people pray, every single day, like clockwork. That's what it's part of their life. Do the same thing for writing. Give that to yourself as a gift. I think good things will happen. I'm a big believer in regular practice of some sort, whether it's prayer or meditation and or writing. It sort of rewires your brain and makes it understand that that's the time for that work.
I can't imagine if everyone here wants to be a writer, they'd have a problem. Like, that's probably what they want to do. That's what they're doing, right? I would think the other things might fall by the wayside. But if you're struggling with finding time to write, maybe you don't really want to do it that much. I don't know. It's just you do what you enjoy doing, right? No?
And on the other side of it, I don't enjoy writing I do once I'm in it, but I write in huge bursts. And what I have to do is I have to create a deadline for myself. So I have to make a social contract. So either I say, I'm going to have a reading of my play on this date, and I haven't started the play, and I know. So I have to create a pressure for myself. I have to put that gun to my own head. Or I belong to, at one point I belonged to 4 writers groups. I don't recommend that because that takes up a lot of time. But I would say, I would sign up for a time in my writers group when my pages would be read. And with some writers groups it's 10 pages, in some writers groups it's an act, in some writers groups it's a whole play. And I would know, oh my God, it's coming up, and that would make me write. And so I think it's probably healthiest to write that half hour a day. What I do is I don't sleep for a week and I write the entire play. And you know what? That actually works for me. I've written 15 plays that way. It works. It works. And then rewriting is a slow process, and I have to do it for hours every single day to make it work over a length of time. But that first draft, I think for me to have those voices be true and urgent, it's got to come out in a burst of panic, really. So I wouldn't say it's healthy, but that's what I meant.
I'm glad you said that, because that is a lot, how I have worked in the past as a writer. It was always difficult for me to establish a routine, and definitely my writing would come in bursts of inspiration. NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month, was actually really good for me because I would write 50,000 words a month, and then I would be like, I have something to edit. Oh, well, I don't really like it, but I still have something. And yeah, I think that if routine is hard for you, then joining a group or being in a class is a great idea, because I know that I got writing done more consistently than any other time when I was in writing workshops in college.
And you say something really important. Finishing, even if it sucks, is huge. Finishing, whatever it is, learning to finish. And otherwise you can never look back and revise. And that's why that isn't interesting, that online writing novel month thing. But finish.
Yeah, I have a commission due in 2 months, and I've been very bad about actually writing it. And so just yesterday, I signed up for this thing. I have to pay $50 for the luxury of going to a room where you're not allowed to be on the internet. You're not allowed to leave once you come. You can't come late. You go from 9 to 12. You get an hour away, and then you go from 2 to 6, and you have to be there. So either you write or you just look at your fingernails, I don't know. But I signed up, I'm doing that for a week, and I've done it 3 other times, and I've written plays in that week.
So self-discipline isn't your.
Well, I have the discipline to sign up and pay my fingernails.
Wow.
No?
It's called est, right?
Yeah, if your self-discipline isn't great, find a way to discipline yourself.
You have to find out what trigger works for you.
That's hilarious.
Ah.
Any notable contests or competitions that students can enter?
Yes, in my field there are. I was going to suggest that there are, if it's a legitimate, never give an agent money, you know, never.
Ever.
Right, but,
Never.
right. Never give an agent money, that's not how it works. You're right, thank you.
Sure.
But there, in my field, there are several contests for, like American Girl has one, how do you say it, yeah, the Bantam,
Oh, Delacorte.
yeah, that one has a contest, historical fiction for middle grade, and you pay, but if it's a legitimate company and they're running a contest, contests can sometimes be really good, because if you pay that 25 or 50 bucks, they will read your work. So it has to be read, it's sort of like an ethical thing, and so it's not a slush pile. And in my field, there are, I think Highlights has one, you know, you could just research it through SCBWI probably, and I know someone who was published entering that, whatever it is, contest, and she was published, you know, she won the prize and they published her novel, middle grade novel. So yes, there are, and I don't know about the other fields.
Yeah, I mean, I'm working with a contest winner right now, actually.
Oh,
That
really?
contest is unfortunately no longer running.
What was it?
But definitely contests are a great way to get considered. I'm working on a fantasy novel where we were trying to acquire some more fantasy and sci-fi books in that area at the main division of Simon & Schuster, because they're very much known for nonfiction in their history, and they're trying to expand into all kinds of fiction. So they held a contest, open submissions for fantasy and sci-fi novels written by students, and so I ended up working with this 22-year-old extremely talented writer who probably would have gotten lost in the slush pile otherwise. So
That's a good question.
Yeah, playwrights, there's hundreds of them. Join the Dramatist Guild. As a student, it won't be expensive to join. Then you get the Dramatist source book, which is a huge, huge book with every month the 50 or 60 contests and submissions that they're actually looking for people, and you shouldn't pay. You shouldn't pay as a playwright to submit to a contest. I won the first contest I sent a play to, my first play, and I never won a contest after that, but it was encouraging enough. I've been going for 15 years, so yeah.
Navigating the postgraduate world as a writer. What piece of advice can you give students?
Support group, that's really what, I mean, find your support. Hopefully you're meeting them here, but if not, meet them somewhere. I know at the Scarsdale Library they have a writers group, and because my friends have gotten readings there. So find the people who will get you through the hard times. People who are kind.
And again, I mean, I find that a good writers group, I mean, I've known writers groups who have been together for years and years and years.
I've been one for 15 years.
Yeah, and these people become like your creative family, you know. And in the best case scenario, they can become your creative family. And when you're out there after graduation, you know, and you're working, you're holding down a job, or you're looking for a job, and you're trying to be creative at the same time. It's often two very different sides of your brain. It's really important, I think, to have the touchstone of support in however that comes. And I would, you know, as a nonfiction writer, adult nonfiction writer, I would say, in the form of a writers group is how work for me. The other thing that I can't, and we haven't really been talking about this, I think really at all, and it's kind of glaring to me by its absence, is one of the things that I found really important for me when I was out there and working and reading other people and publishing other people's manuscripts and struggling to have my own work published at the same time, and and running pillar to post and trying to be creative and trying to stay healthy and all of this kind of stuff was reading. And I had a particular novel that just landed on on my desk at the right time and in my life, and I read it over and over and over and over again. And you guys all have like a favorite book that you just you love it and you read it over and over again. It can be a pretty cold and harsh world out there sometimes post-graduation, and I find that reading the works that you love and that inspire you and ignite that little flame in you, keep you going and keep you motivated, don't forget about them.
And the ones that really stink, too.
Yeah, and the ones that really
They
stink.
go, I could do better than that. Surely I can do better. But that would publish. Those are just as inspiring sometimes.
Sometimes, yes. Sometimes, yes.
And in terms of breaking into the writing world post-graduation, I think the concepts of networking a lot and doing your research still apply, and reading widely as well. I mean, I know that when I graduated and I was trying to figure out what was going on in the world of writing, I was also looking for jobs with publishers. So it was, like when a job opened up at a publisher, I would try to read one of their books and figure out what they did. And then when a job opened up at another publisher, I would read one of their books and figure out what they did. And that was sort of the strategy that I used to read widely and figure out, as a reader and as a writer, what I liked, what I didn't like, what I wanted to see more of. So I think that those are great things to keep in mind.
I thought you were going to say Emma. I thought the glaring thing was the MFA.
No, the other thing that I find really interesting, and I'm just going to throw this out there, I've done a lot of traveling over the last couple of years, and I have found myself listening to a lot of podcasts, a lot of writers' podcasts, and I find them absolutely fascinating. And off the top of my head right now, I can't, because of the aforementioned cold medicine, I can't remember the name of the one, but I
Writers on Writing?
Writers on
Barbara
Writing,
DeMarco?
no, and just really, listening to other writers talk about their craft and their practice and their process
Journey.
and their journey.
Yeah, I like that too.
It's like we have all been there, and we've all been there in different ways and different forms, but we've all been there.
Yeah, I listen to Writers on Fire, Writers
Yeah.
on Writing, Barbara DeMarco Barrett. You can get it online.
Yeah.
I like those stories.
Do you have any final words before we open it up for questions from the audience? So now, if you have any questions for our panel members? Yes.
Yeah, I have a question for Sophia. I'm interested in, so like, as an editorial assistant, are you looking at people's queries? And if you are, like, what is something that editors look for in a query letter? Because I hear that's like, the hardest part is just getting through
Yeah.
with your letter.
I have looked at a lot of queries in the last several years of my life because I look at them as an assistant, and before that I looked at them as an agent's assistant. And definitely a lot of the time you don't get past the letter because there are just so many letters. So I would say the most important things are to be able to sum up what you're doing in a quick elevator pitch kind of thing, even if that feels completely against what you're doing. I would still, you know, even if all you could say is like, this is a literary novel that mashes up all these genres, you should still be able to say that. So that they know from the beginning sort of what headspace they should be in when they're looking at what you're doing. And I would also think about sort of why you wrote what you did, how it speaks to you, what themes, you know, from what themes that you care about and what themes from your life come out in it, because I think that the more of that you can put into a letter, the more it's going to pique somebody else's interest. If you can get a sense of the person through a letter, that's always great.
That's interesting.
Do you have any special cures for writer's block?
I don't think there is such a thing.
What, pure or writer's block?
Writer's block.
Yeah.
I mean, there's times when you're not writing, you're living, you're seeing, you're being, you're reading. And that's all part of the process. You know, maybe you're walking in the woods, or, you know, there's months I don't write. But I don't see that as wasted time in any way. You know, being a waitress is part of being a writer, being a mom. I mean, hopefully nobody here is doing that, yet. But, you know, it's all, none of it is I mean, unless you have a deadline.
Yeah, well, that's what
Yeah,
I was
okay.
I'd say deadlines are the
That's-
cure for
okay.
writer's block.
Right, yeah.
That's
Deadlines,
what I would say
Yeah.
too.
yeah, deadlines are the cure. Also, I love to listen to podcasts. Listening to stories really gets me writing.
Sometimes watching movies.
Going places where you can't write, like driving or being in the shower,
Yes,
always
of
makes
course.
me want to write.
You know, the other thing that, and I have suffered intermittently from, I wouldn't call it a block, but I just,
Dry spell.
you know, no, but I mean, with the deadline, you know, where I've just sort of hit a wall. And I've hit a creative wall, and I don't know where the story is going, or I don't, you know. And what I find really helps me a lot is writing short bursts of stuff in another genre that I don't even have any interest in writing, you know. Yeah, it's like it resets something in my brain. I am not a science fiction writer. I will never be. I'm not a science fiction reader. I will never be. It's just not what I do. But I've done that. I've used that tool, you know, and that's helped.
I also, have you read Anne Lamott's book, Bird by Bird? Read her book. It's such a gift. Honestly, everybody should read it. And she has a chapter called Shitty First Drafts. I don't know if it's called that. And she says you must write a shitty first draft. And that's so freeing. That it doesn't have to, I don't believe in waiting for inspiration. Inspiration will not come. You have to just make yourself write, and you have to make yourself write badly. It's never going to be as bad as you think. Tell my students who are really stuck, really resistant, really having trouble, is I'm like, okay, for 3 days, you're only allowed to write 5 minutes each day. And you have to set a timer, it has to be at the same time, and you are only allowed, and you're not allowed to go to bed unless you've written those 5 minutes. And then after those 3 days, you're allowed to write 10 minutes. And upping it until because people find if they're only allowed to write 5 minutes, at the end of the 5 minutes, they're like, oh, I got something else. And if you're not allowed the next day, you'll be ready to write that 10 minutes. So I just think, at least for me, putting things in boxes of time like that really helps.
Okay. Sometimes stories are like so big and you have so many ideas and you can't kind of cope with it. What would you say is the best way to outline the book or make sure that everything is in order for you to write? Like what do you guys do to write a story?
Maybe you have more than one story. I never outline.
I never outline either. You know, I was talking to somebody recently about the difference between autobiography.
Is you making a face?
Why do you do that?
That's right.
But I have friends who outline, so if that works for you, you should do it.
And I was talking to somebody recently about the difference between autobiography and memoir.
Mm-hmm.
And I had said that, you know, that memoir is a curated sliver of a life, and autobiography is almost like, you know, kind of unexpected.
Also, you have to be somewhat famous to write autobiography.
Well, not
Who
necessarily.
wants the autobiography?
Of me.
Yeah.
My mother wrote it.
Yeah, her mother, my kids, she
Right,
wants it.
right, okay, thank you. So, you know, when you're looking at a story, you know, when you've got the story in your head, and the story is like this big, right, you know, I find that if you imagine yourself whittling, you know, paring something down, paring, you know, just get everything down. You know, and don't try and make it perfect in the first draft, make it a shitty first draft, just do it, you know, like a dump. And then as you revise and revise and revise and revise, what will happen, I think, naturally, is that sliver, that curated sliver, whether it's a novel or a memoir, or a novel or nonfiction, that curated sliver will sort of rise to the surface, and you will be surprised that you tried to force the story a certain way, and stories want to be their own thing, I think, and very often characters who you didn't think were necessarily important will bubble to the surface as more important. And that only really happens, I think, it only really happens in revision. I think the most important thing is just to get it all down.
Well,
And
I
then
also,
curate.
oh, sorry.
No,
Well, I also use the single sentence model, that I teach that when I'm teaching, that you know exactly what this story is about and you get rid of everything else. So I suggest that after a certain point, like you couldn't probably do this right at the beginning, but maybe after you've written a draft, what is your story about? You write this one really huge, it's sort of like an elevator pitch, but it's not, because it could be really long, it could be a whole paragraph long. It's only specific to your book. So it's a single sentence that describes that story and no other story. And everything you're writing has to answer to that sentence. And if it doesn't, it probably doesn't belong in that story. So it would be really specific, that character, that setting, that place, that plot. What is it about? And get rid of everything else. And I found that really helpful.
I'm also going to go back to Anne Lamott, and she writes, the reason it's called Bird by Bird is because she had to write a book report, and it was the night before, and she was freaking out, and her father said, and it was about birds. And he said, just write one bird at a time. Just so there's a scene you know. There's a scene in this story that you know. Write that scene. And then write the other scene. Oh, when I was writing my plays, the first couple plays, I thought I had the scenes I was dying to write, the scenes that really made me want to write this play to begin with. And I felt like I had to earn them, like I had to write the interstitiary material to get to that scene, and then write up to the next scene. And I found now that if I just write the juicy scenes that I'm dying to write, that I'm dying to see, I don't generally need those other scenes. So write the parts of the thing that you love, that brought you to it, and then little by little in the rewriting, you'll be able to carve out the shape of it. I find.
Yeah, I almost think the best place to outline is in revision, when you're sort of trying to organize it and clean it up and figure out what's the most important. Because I definitely tried the outlining approach when I was just starting something, and I found that I spent a lot of time outlining and not a lot of time actually getting to write. And if I had already begun to write and I tried outlining in the middle, I would, find the story just wasn't shaping up the way I thought it would, and it would back me into a corner. So
yeah, and the other problem with outlining is adherence to the outline. So if you've written, it's not the process of writing. Writing is an organic process.
Yeah.
Stories become what they want to become very often. And you can't do that if you say, okay, well, number 2, letter A. So.
Yeah, taming your character. Like what you said, your characters know what they want to do. They know better than you do, so let them do what they want to do,
Right.
and follow them.
And be surprised by it.
This is for Deborah. As a playwright, when you're starting to write your play, do you write them based off of like you were saying, like the scenes that you're dying to write, or do you specifically choose a topic? And choose a topic? Like, how do you really sit down and come down to like, okay, I want to write my play about this?
It's changed, each play is different and it's changed over years. I used to write, I was started as a playwright, as an actress, so I used to write the characters that I would be dying to play. But now I'm much more interested in like the big idea, the big question. I write a lot of science plays. If anybody wants to write science plays, the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation has really helped me a lot. They supported me a lot. They give you money to write your science plays. And I feel like my job as a playwright is to ask what it means to be human at this point in time. And so I have big questions about what it means to be human. Now that we can trace our genome, what does it mean to be human? Are we the essence of our genome? What is identity? So I'll have a big question like that. And then I populate that question. I'll find a situation where I can really delve into it. And then I have to fall in love with those characters. So I have to spend a lot of time with those characters. I usually think about my play for a full year before I write it. I research it. I spend time with those characters. I find the song. I have to fall in love. I have to walk around thinking about my character and smile. I have to hear a song that reminds me of that person. Maybe I read a novel. I'll listen to stories that remind me of them until I'm so in love with them that they can take it from me. I don't have to force them to do things, but I know the high points. I know the conflict. Every play is all about big conflict, seeing conflicts, and so that's generally how I shape it now. But I think falling in love with character and just letting your story come from that is also very valid.
I have a question for Sophia. I was just wondering how you broke into the publishing industry and like working with the media and like the process of it.
It's a difficult thing to break into. Again, the key answer is networking. And I am someone who hates that idea. So I mean, really, you just have to look at it as like trying to make new friends.
There's a lot of turnover in there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of turnover.
Yeah,
They're
and so
always-
something is always opening up
Yeah.
if you meet the people who are going to know about it. With that said, especially when you're trying to get into the editorial department, I should mention that there are a lot of other departments, and
I was gonna say, they move around,
yeah,
right? PR, marketing, so.
and yeah, and I mean, some of them are a great place to be as a writer, like as a publicist. If you like people, you also, I mean, you get to write pitches for writers and work with writers all the time. So.
And you can move around,
yeah.
once you're in the door.
Yeah, but yeah, definitely trying to get into the editorial department. It's probably the most competitive because everybody at least has some idea of what that is. And I often didn't get an interview unless I had met somebody at the company before and, was able to personally send my resume and say, hey, so I saw there was an opening, would you mind? So yeah, I would work any connections that you have or don't think you have as much as possible, because I ended up getting my job because my resume was sent to a friend of my mom's from college, who then sent it to an editor at Simon & Schuster, who then sent it to the publisher at Simon & Schuster, and then he called me 6 months later. So yeah, just try to meet as many people as you can, from wherever you can, and go to any networking events that you can find, because I know that I didn't have much beyond going to Sarah Lawrence, but the first job I got with that agent, she was a Sarah Lawrence alum and put in a call for interns, and that was on her. So yeah, definitely work with your career services people. And be brave and try to meet as many people as possible. Sometimes I would be emailing with people that I had never met in my life, and they would agree to have an informational meeting with me and just talk about their jobs, and that would give me a little bit of a better sense of the industry. So every little bit helps.
Did you have your...
Chance. What are like some of the books that all of you have really looked at that have inspired
inspired you, made you want to do your job the most, like the authors of books, what are your favorites, I guess?
Favorite writer?
Or both.
Wallace Stegner, Crossing to Safety. You know Wallace Stegner? Am I answering the right question? Yeah, okay. Wallace Stegner's Crossing to Safety, I have read probably 15 times in the last 10 years or so. I have a copy, I'm slightly obsessed, I have a copy of it like in every room of my house. It's just the fact, it is in a world filled with sort of exceptionalism, you know, loud, brash, crazy writing. It's a simple story about two couples growing up, coming up actually as professors at a University of Wisconsin in the 1930s, and follows their friendship through the eyes of one of the husbands who's a writer. And it's just magnificent language. And I heartily recommend it.
It's funny because all the writers I had to read when I was here at school, I'm so glad I read then, because I don't think I have the brain to read them now. Because now I like to be, I read all women's, what you'd call like domestic or literary fiction, Barbara Kingsolver, Ann Tyler, Sue Miller, Ann Patchett, Bird by Bird, Ann Lamott. So now I just read what I just love, and if I don't like a book, I get to close it and put it away. I don't have to write a paper on it. Although notoriously I wrote a paper on Moby Dick and I never read a word of it. I like realistic women's fiction and men's, but that's what I read. I try to read as high up as I possibly, I try to read as high up as I can. I don't read my genre. I don't read middle grade and YA novels. So I'm always I try to reach as high as I can and hope I get somewhere close in my own writing to the people I most admire and think are just, like Ann Tyler, when I read her books, which have no plot and are just about nothing sometimes, and yet she's such an amazing writer, so simplistic, and yet I just eat her words up, and she's incredible. Her writing and I just read a book called The Department of Speculation that I thought was, I think it's Simon Schuster, is it?
Another division,
it's this small. I read it on the train to New York City, and I thought she has created a new form of writing. It was beautiful. I just looked for language, like incredibly beautiful. So Department of Speculation, I was blown out of the water by it. Loved. And so I want to read like the best writing I possibly can and hope to come somewhere close to it. And I'm here and here, but why not?
So this is a difficult question.
At least she didn't say what's your favorite book. Is that right?
It's
no
almost
answer.
the same question.
No, you get to say a lot.
It's difficult for me to pin down what inspires me the most because I read really widely and I read things that inspire me all the time. But I think one book that I've read in the last few years is The Brief Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde by Jimenez. Because, well, for one thing, I was a total fantasy nerd as a kid, and I loved that the main character was too. But also, I think that's a good example of the kind of book that really inspires me. He is doing something that in mainstream publishing, there's still not a lot of, he put a lot of Spanglish in his book, which, was not a thing that people had really done before. And he really had things to say, and I think it's a great example of how if you write to your passion, you can make it work no matter what.
And he apparently, the author is Junot Diaz, and he apparently had a huge, was the writer's block question person. He hit a wall apparently over and over and over again, and you know, he started it in the beginning, in the middle, and then he moved to the end, and it was, you know, he wrote it out of order, and was certain nothing was going to come of it. So,
That is a beautiful book, so.
and I think he won the National Book Award, did he win?
The Pulitzer.
The Pulitzer, oh, right, sorry. Just that. Right.
Yeah, it's corny, but I just say I love my friends' plays. And it's true. I mean, there's some, like, I found my community of writers, and you know, that's what I want to read, that's what I want to see. And just, and plays are hard, and they're messy, and I don't necessarily want a play that's perfect and works, and I like to see a play where somebody's ambitious and trying something that they don't quite achieve, but I admire the effort. Yeah.
Final questions? Please. What's your opinion that you do the practice of MFA program?
No, there's the question.
There's the question.
There it is.
Hey, you were gonna get away with that.
I am personally, they're not gonna help you get published. That's a given. So if your goal is to be a published author, it's not gonna get you closer to that, but if you wanna teach, the combination of having an MFA and, you know, publishing can help you get it, teaching